Okay, so today I would like to introduce our partner who we like to partner with our friends at the Bellingham Public Library frequently on author events. They are dear friends of ours. And so to introduce our authors today, I'm going to ask you to please welcome Jennifer Lovecik. She is the Teen Services Librarian for the Bellingham Public Library. So thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you. I am, excuse me, I'm honored and thrilled to welcome two amazing YA authors with us today. Tahereh Mafi is the New York Times bestselling and National Book Award nominated author of A Very Large Expanse of Sea, the Shatter Me series, Furthermore, and Witchwood. Her new novel, An Emotion of Great Delight, came out yesterday and is a searing look into the world of a single Muslim family in the wake of 9/11. It's about a child of immigrants forging a blurry identity, falling in love, and finding hope in the midst of a modern war. Ms. Mafi lives in California with her daughter and husband, fellow author Ransom Riggs. Marie Lu is the New York Times bestselling author of the Legend series, the Young Elites series, and the Warcross series, and the standalone novel, The Kingdom of Back. Her newest book is Sky Hunter, with the second in this new series set to be released in September. A former video game art director, Marie Lu now writes full-time and lives in Los Angeles with her husband, toddler, and a chihuahua. Thank you guys so much for being here.
No, thank you.
First
of all, thank you so much, Village Books and Bellingham Public Library, for introducing us. Welcome everyone to this event. Congratulations, Tada, on your book coming out. I know release week is always overwhelming, but I'm so happy that this book is out there and just so delighted that more of your amazing work is out in the world. So congrats.
Thank you so much. I'm mostly just thrilled that I put this book out so that I can talk to you today.
This is why I write my books, so that I get to talk to you too.
Just to be able to hang out with you for an hour on the internet.
Aw, I miss you a lot. For everyone in the audience, we both live in California, but you know, pandemic and also just life. Yeah. So it's always a treat and a delight to talk to you, whether virtually or in person. So as they said, start putting your Q&As in the Q&A box, and meanwhile, we'll get started. So an emotion of great light, like this book, like all of your books, I just read your books in like a single breath because they are so lush and rich and full of emotion and just amazing works of literature. And this book, I feel like was you know, it is many years in the making. How did you know you were ready to let this story out? And do you think you would have approached it differently if it was like at a different time in your life versus now? Yeah, what brought you to this book now?
Okay, so first of all, thank you for all of your kind words. Seriously, coming from somebody I admire so much as a writer, it means a lot to me. And I really like that question. Wow, yeah, it definitely has been a long time in the making. As many of you know, if you're here, if you have any familiarity with me or my books, you know that I've been publishing now for about 10 years. So I got my start in publishing with a dystopian novel called Shatter Me, and you know, many other books since then. And yet I only started publishing works of realistic fiction in 2018. And, you know, so it took me quite a long time to get there. And I find that when I talk about an emotion of great delight, I struggle to do so without also mentioning A Very Large Expanse of Sea, which was my first work of realistic fiction, because that book began this journey for me. And once I wrote that book, this book seemed obvious. So I think, you know, I'm sure that you can relate to this, Marie. I know we've had many conversations about this, but 10 years ago, the publishing industry was so different.
Mhm.
The landscape was so different. And I didn't think that I was allowed to write books like A Very Large Expanse of Sea or An Emotion of Great Delight. I didn't think I was allowed to write books about people who looked like me. I didn't think I could write books like that and still have a robust commercial career. I didn't want to write books that would be relegated to some dusty corner of the bookstore. I wanted to be a writer of commercial fiction. I knew that at the onset. And, when we were starting out, they were publishers were publishing books about Black girls with pictures of white girls on the cover. I mean, this was something that was actively happening. So it just didn't seem like, for the first 5 years of my career, I asked my publisher not to include my author photo on my books, because I thought that if somebody saw what I looked like, they wouldn't want to buy my books. So that was the point of view from which I approached publishing. So I didn't think that my voice was wanted in this world, and yet I wanted to be a writer. So it took a long time to unlearn that and to reclaim myself. And like for me, every time I post a picture on Instagram, it's like a personal victory because for so long I didn't put my face out there. I was afraid to put my face out there. And now writing these books, I think I had waited so long to see myself reflected in the world around me. I had been waiting for someone else to do it. I had been waiting for someone else to write my specific story. There were other stories in the world about Middle Eastern women or Muslim women, very few of which were not like terrorist adjacent or some weird caricature of a Muslim life or a Muslim teenager, or weren't like preachy in some way. But they weren't about my experience because, I'm an Iranian American. That experience is very different from being Arab or Indian or, these ethnicities are so different. And I was looking for something that would reflect my lived experience, and I couldn't find it. And I had been waiting and waiting for so long to see that representation. And when it didn't happen, I think what finally broke me was when I had my daughter, because I wrote A Very Large Expanse of Sea when my daughter was about 4 months old. And I don't know exactly what it was, but I think there was just something about like looking at her. I just thought like, no one else did it. If you don't do it, who's going to do it? So I had to write myself into the world. And it was terrifying. It was really scary because I hadn't done it. I didn't think I had permission. And so once I wrote that book, which was about unlearning anger in the pursuit of happiness, I knew I wanted to write a book about sorrow. I wanted to write a book about just pure unadulterated pain and the pursuit of joy. So these books kind of dovetail together, and they were for me, it was an approach to two different emotional approaches to a similar, a sort of similar experience.
That's so beautifully put, and I'm so grateful that that you are writing these books and able to put them out there, and that you feel capable of doing it now. And I think all of us are lucky to have them in the world. So I hope that you doing so encourages other young people to do so, and that I think every single one of these books that you put out into the world resonates with the world in a way that will go on for years and years and decades. So I'm so happy that you're writing these now. And you had mentioned that this dovetails so seamlessly with A Very Large Expanse of Sea. Did it feel? Did your process in going about writing these two books feel different? Because they are similar in many ways in the way that you are trying to encapsulate these emotional journeys, and they're both approaching love and emotion in different ways. But did it feel different for you in writing them process wise?
Yeah, definitely. I think it was much easier to write A Very Large Expanse of Sea because it was easy to channel anger.
Right.
Anger is an easy defense mechanism, right? We erect
Mhm.
walls of anger and when we are wounded, and you know, it's easy to distance yourself from emotion when you're angry.
Mhm.
And so that approach to writing was also easier because
Mhm.
Shireen, the main character of A Very Large Expanse of Sea, had so many walls up. And of course, inside, she's deeply vulnerable. But anyway, it was easier that she was more sarcastic, and it was funnier. It was more fun. And this book definitely has moments of levity and definitely light. It's not all just like pain. It's not about marinating in sorrow. It's about escaping it. It's about finding your way back to joy. So definitely, it's definitely balanced with moments of light, but it was far more difficult an exercise for me as a writer to steep so deeply in sadness in order to write this book. It took a real toll on me. For sure.
Yeah, I can imagine. And did you have to have some coping mechanisms and self-care in place to, help yourself through this process? Because I mean, I can only imagine how much it took.
Well, I had to write it quickly. That was my coping mechanism. I had to write it quickly. I wrote the first draft of this book, and sorry, this is going to sound like the dumbest thing, but my eyelashes keep getting tangled.
Oh
It's
God, I hate
like
that.
does that happen?
Yeah.
To you? It's like
Yes.
very annoying. It's like the mascara gets like stuck or something, like on Zoom. I'm like, I keep touching my eyes.
No, you're fine.
But I just wanted to say that, yeah, I had to write the book quickly. It was very hard to stay sad for such a protracted period, for such a prolonged period of time. So I listened to a lot of very, very, very sad music constantly to keep myself like in that headspace. And I wrote the first draft of the book in about a week.
Oh my God. Wow.
Yeah,
That's
I
amazing.
mean, I was like,
You're like, get it out.
I had to just, yeah, I wasn't sleeping. I was like, I need to get this book down on paper. And yeah, so everything, the drafting and the revising, I did all of those things in very short bursts of intense, very
Wow.
intense periods of time. Because
Wow.
every time I saw my daughter, she'd be like this ray of
Oh,
sunshine, and I'd be like, oh,
right. You're like, I don't feel sad anymore.
well, no, I mean, she would immediately snap me out of it. Yeah, she would
Right.
snap me out of it. And I was like, this is very detrimental to my work right now.
Stop making me feel happy.
I know, stop being so
Beautiful daughter. Oh, bless.
I know.
And it's interesting hearing this kind of like intense process of writing this book, because I was thinking about this as I was reading it, and I think you made probably a very conscious choice to make it YA, not just because it's a companion to A Very Large Expanse of Sea, which is YA, but that being able to access these kinds of emotions really fits with YA as opposed to adult, and the story would have worked beautifully as adult too, just as an adult looking back on and reflecting on experiences from our youth. But did that cross your mind at all, the I guess putting it into or it fitting very naturally into a YA format? And was it more difficult to write this as YA because you have to be so in tune with the emotions that Shadi is feeling?
No, it was not more difficult to write it as YA. I do absolutely want to write an adult novel one day. I mean, because that's like a totally different range of and access of emotion that I would love to examine and experience. But no, it felt right. I think I there's so much I want to say about my own teenage experience and the teenage experiences of the people I knew.
Mhm.
It's not just about me. It's about the communities I was a part of. It's about the other young women I knew and the young men I knew. And like, I haven't seen their stories represented. And there's so much to say. And there's so much diversity within that world. And so and I'd only written the one, real work of realistic fiction. So it definitely felt natural to me to write another
Mhm.
in YA. But I also, when you talk about accessing those emotions,
Mhm.
I often marvel at the fact that now, as a grown woman who is so far from the world of my youth,
Mhm.
I'm so removed from that world. I'm in such a different place now. I'm so much happier now. I'm so much more grounded now. And yet, if I think for 5 minutes or less about something that happened to me as a teenager, I mean, I could start crying right away. You know what I mean? Like, it's right there. It feels so present to me. Forget even as a teenager, thinking about things that I experienced as a child, like these emotions are so present to me and they're still so vivid and so
Right.
easily accessible that it astonishes me how easily we dismiss the pain of young people,
Mhm.
because the pain of a young person leaves an indelible mark.
Mhm.
And so much so that even later, years later, when you are an established grown up, like, you can still be affected by these things that happened to you so long ago. So I don't know, it wasn't very difficult for me to access those emotions. This was the trick of it though, right? Is that I just had to let myself feel
Right.
things that I haven't wanted to feel in a long time, even just to change my headspace.
Yeah, that's such a good point, because about us not valuing the emotions and pain of young people, because that period, that transformative period. I mean, I don't remember everything that happened to me, but I remember those emotions like to the T. Like it doesn't even have to be. It could be like the first time that I like held a boy's hand, or the first time that someone like breaks your heart. Like, there's nothing that has happened so far in my adult life that has really, compared to that kind of just that sharp emotional state of feeling, especially feeling these specific things for the very first time. So I know exactly what you mean. These are what set us on our paths, and that we spend years and years unpacking. And you had mentioned earlier that this book is not just about one character's pain. It's not just about Shadi. It's about the entire community around her, her family, her parents, her best friends, and how everyone in her community is processing the trauma in a different way. And I found that so striking and so heartbreaking, and just a depiction of the fact that we are not a monolith. Like, everyone is different, everyone reacts differently, everyone heals differently. How did you go about building this incredibly intricate and messy and tangled web of how each character goes about coping with you know similar types of trauma that's happening to their community?
I don't know. I just, I don't know. I think I just, I'm sure you do the same thing. You pay attention to the people around you. You pay attention to
Mhm.
the ways in which people respond. I personally find these things fascinating. I think in another life I might have been like like an anthropologist or something, a sociologist. I find human nature fascinating. I find the mechanisms of the human heart fascinating.
Mhm.
I love to read like psychology books.
Yeah.
I think the ways in which we respond to trauma are so interesting. And I like paying attention to the people, to people, full stop, and the ways in which they respond to all kinds of things, anything, good situations, bad situations. It's like I'm like a hoarder of human emotion and experience. Like, it doesn't matter who you are. I find your life and your experiences fascinating. And there's like a vault in my mind where I keep all of this, I don't know, acquired data. And I'm like, oh, well, you know, if one person is like this, then I know another person. You know, I don't know. I just kind of input it all into the computer brain. And it
That's
just
pretty awesome. Yeah, because I mean, it's so interesting to hear about the, you know, your ability to do this subconsciously and on the page. To me, as the reader, it feels so, you know, like you had a spreadsheet out and was figuring all of this out, and it's everything is perfectly locked together, but in a very, you know, organic and beautiful way. And I think it's just a testament to the fact that your brain contains all of these multitudes and vaults of all of your experiences and all of your observations of people, that it feels like you can just extract that whole and put it into a story. I think that's really, really cool.
That's very kind. I marvel at your incredible genius every time I read one of your books.
Oh,
really, like you are incapable of writing books that are not excellent. You can't do it. Every single
I am
book
fully capable.
No, she's not.
Oh, I've never sent
watching.
one of my first drafts. I hope you never ever see them.
I don't believe it. I don't believe it. I believe everything you write is perfect.
I was on the phone with our mutual friend Adam Sofair the other day, and he was like, I was like, I'm sorry, I sound really out of it. I'm doing copy edits, and like my poor copy editor is just counting like hours with me. And she's like, I think the sun has set like 3 times now in like the middle of this book. Can you please go back and just recount your days? And I'm like, I swear I did it like 3 times anyway. Yeah.
I've been there. I've totally been there. I sympathize.
Oh man, writing. Speaking of writing and of the vaults in our minds, how, you know, writing contemporary is something that's very intimidating to me to think about, just because you, like with fantasy and science fiction, not that those are not difficult, but I can, you know, I can make up things a lot more easily. So how did your approach change when writing contemporary versus the Shatter Me series, and versus, and I'll ask you a little bit about this later, your upcoming fantasy series? How do you world build a contemporary universe? Because there is so much world building that goes into contemporary that a lot of people don't realize.
I think I'm going to disappoint you with my answers. I don't know. I world build contemporary the same way I world build fantasy or sci-fi, which is, you know, 5 senses and location and people. I don't know. That's probably a very, there's smarter people out there who will be able to answer that question so much more articulately. I don't think, you know what my struggle is when I get asked questions about craft? I struggle to answer them because I've never taken a creative writing class. I've never read a book on craft. I don't have the tools, you know, I don't know the language. I'm sure that there are words for everything that we do. And like if I had gone to an MFA program, I might be able to tell you what it is that I do in my head. Like I'd know the jargon, but I don't know what it's called. So I don't know how to explain it.
Right. I mean, but you definitely have a process. Like, yeah.
There's definitely a process, but I'm not sure what it's called. And I think a smarter person would be able to tell you what it's called.
I think it has nothing to do with being smart. I think you have a really good process that works for you.
Well, I think books are, the books we write, I'm sure I feel like maybe you would agree with this, but of course, feel free to disagree with me if you don't. I feel like the books that we write, all books, generally speaking, are made up of other books because we consume books and then we create books.
Right.
And I learned how to write books from reading books. So I don't know, everything I've learned from the structure of other stories.
Right. And that was actually something I wanted to ask you too, because your language, your style is so unique and so recognizable. And even though all of your stories are so different, there's this consistent beauty in all of them where you are capable of unpacking these incredibly complex, human emotions into words. Um, did you have authors that inspired your style and helped you arrive at this style that you have? Are there, books that kind of you hold close to your heart that you find yourself referencing?
I think so. I think definitely. Like I love Gabriel Garcia Marquez. Huge fan. I mean, his writing is just so, so, so beautiful. When I think about like lyrical, beautiful writing that has inspired me, like 100%. Like before I wrote my middle grade novels, Witchwood in particular, I read like all of Marquez's books again. And I was
nice.
I was like deeply inspired by his language and his imagination. Like in 100 Years of Solitude. I love magical realism, for example. Like I think it's so romantic and stunning. And I definitely draw inspiration from that. But I actually, first of all, thank you for thinking that my writing is nice.
Nice.
I think that it's definitely polarizing because some people want, they like their stories a little bit a lot more just to the point. And what I have learned is that no matter what I do, because here's the thing is that I have tried. Sometimes I think I have written a book that has absolutely no poetry in it at all, like no poetic element to it whatsoever. And inevitably someone will be like, this book is way too poetic. And I'm like, I was trying not to.
And you shouldn't have to try not to.
But I think what I've realized is that it's more than just inspiration from other books. I think it is just a part of my language, right? Because of my Iranian background, because I grew up with very dramatic people who in Farsi say and like describe everything in really dramatic, poetic, like I mean off the cuff. Like every Iranian person I have ever met, every Persian person I've ever met is like a natural poet, like just with theatrics, like my mom doesn't tell me that something doesn't look good on me. She won't just say, no, it doesn't suit you. I bought a jacket once and I put it on and I was like, what do you think? And she didn't say, I don't like the way it looks on you. She said, what, that jacket is weeping on your body. And she just off the cuff, like, that's just what she said to me. And I was like, right, well, you could have just said you didn't like it. But this is the kind of language that I was immersed in. This is the language of the Persian poets that I grew up with. And I didn't learn to describe emotions using simple words. Everything was big, huge, grand. And it's a part of me. It's a part of my identity. It's a part of my culture. And I'm realizing now that I can't take it out of me. It's just how I was brought up. It's like infused.
I kind of love it so much. I love all of your stories about your mom. She's the actual best.
Yeah, my mom, she's hilarious.
Bless. Did you have a favorite character to write in this book? Because I have so many favorites as I read through it, and they are all so visceral. Was there one that was easiest for you to access? And one that was the most challenging?
Oh gosh, I mean, I think my favorite character was Shadi. I, she's such an imperfect character. She makes a lot of, incorrect decisions, even like sacrificing herself to try and make her mother happy, or, like disappearing, trying to disappear because she thinks that maybe she'll become less of a burden for the people suffering around her. This is wrong, this is incorrect thinking, but I just loved how much she was trying in her own broken way to help ameliorate the situation. I just thought her intentions were so pure and she was so misunderstood. And I deeply felt for her as a character. And she was pretty easy to write, I think.
Yeah, I was ready to throw fists for her. Like there were so many moments where I was like, God damn, sorry, I'm cussing. I am gonna start fighting. And yeah. I thought she was such a beautifully flawed but so earnest, such an earnest character.
Yeah.
I loved her so much.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Was there a character that was hard for you to write, or someone who seemed very difficult to access?
Well, they were all hard for me to write. They were all hard in their own way. I mean, I love Shadi. She's probably my favorite character, but she was also the most difficult character to write.
Yeah.
Her character was the most vulnerable and the most like actively wounded. The dad character was difficult to write. The mom character was difficult to write. I mean, it was all difficult to write. They're all just wounded people, and they're all trying so hard in their own way and dealing with trauma stupidly, incorrectly, blindly, but trying,
Yeah.
I don't know. You have an opinion on this. What's your opinion on this?
My opinion. Well, it was just making me think about the scene with, no spoilers. Sorry, I gotta remember that.
Oh,
but
right.
like, there's like these scenes with her and her father that just made me sob and sob and sob because it's such a complicated relationship. And same with her mother, and just all these scenes of Shadi with her family. And I still remember smiling when I read like one of the earlier scenes in the book where the family, this is before tragedy hits the family, and everyone is in the house just rushing around. Just like, why won't anyone just take me to school? I just loved it so much because it was so real and so just so authentic, like just so real, that's the beauty of all of your characters. And I can't even say, well, I have a couple that I really disliked in the way that you wanted me to dislike them. But they all felt so real, and their different ways of accessing trauma was so real. And yeah, I had a lot of intense feelings reading about Shadi's journey and everyone around her, and of course Ali. Because there's a lot of beautiful moments, and you had talked earlier about balancing the light moments with darkness, and there is a lot of heartbreak in this story, but there are these just absolutely bright moments, and I keep thinking about Shadi and her need to make herself smaller and to pull herself back in order to save the ones around her. And there's this moment where she's just like, you know what? No. And I just wanted to hug her. I loved her so much in that moment. I'm sorry, this isn't even a question. I'm just kind of like rambling about your book now. Yeah, I thought it was also intricately built and organically built. Just so beautiful. So
Thank you.
Yeah, I loved it so much. Okay, I will, before we run out of time, and switch to Q&A, I want to talk a little bit about your fantasy epic that you have coming out next year, right? Early 2022.
Yeah.
And
February 1st.
And you've just announced the title for it is This Woven Kingdom, and I'm so excited for it. Can you tell us anything about it?
Yeah. I'm so pumped about this, you guys. I have been talking about this very sad book for a long time now, and I'm ready to stop talking about how sad it is, which I should not be saying on my during my launch week, during one of my launch events. I love this book. I love An Emotion of Great Delight. I really, really do, and I'm very proud of it. But I'm also just super, super pumped about the new fantasy. It is. Okay, so we're pitching it as if Game of Thrones were set during the Persian Empire, but with a bit of a Bridgerton vibe. So it's yeah, it's like court drama, intrigue, but also like clashing empires and forbidden romance and like.
Oh my God, I am going to die.
It's the longest book I have ever published, and but I'm pumped. I'm excited.
Yay!
Yeah. So
all of those things just hitting triggers in my head. I cannot wait for this. This is gonna be so good. Has it been really different writing? I'm sure it must have been a little bit different writing this one.
Oh, it was very different. So I wrote an Emotion of Great Delight like in 2019. It was a long time ago. I wrote This Woven Kingdom in 2020. So I wrote, that was my pandemic book, and it nearly killed me because of the pandemic. I mean,
yeah.
It was a tough time. It was a really tough time, and there were days when I was like, am I ever going to get through this? Am I going to finish it? Am I going to make it? I was editing this book like during the elections, and
oh my God,
it was so stressful, and like fire season, like Southern California was
a lot.
fire, and people were evacuating, and it was a very, very stressful time. But this was like this was my thing. This was my book. Yeah. This was my happy place in all of that, and I had so much fun writing it. And I love these characters. And yeah, it was a very, very different experience.
I am so excited to read it, and I totally get what you mean. Last year was a lot. I mean, it really was. I think by the end, we're just like, come on. You just start laughing after a while. You're like, really?
Yeah. Yeah. But then 2021 was also like.
Yeah. People storming the Capitol. I'm like, okay, this is fine.
Oh my God.
More of, oh man.
Yeah. Hey, yeah. I'm sorry. Unless you, I wasn't sure if you had any other questions, but I just wanted to say, I am super, super excited about the sequel to Sky Hunter.
Oh, thank you.
Steel Striker?
Steel Striker. Yeah.
Steel Striker. I have been trying to convince somebody to get me an early copy of the sequel.
As soon as it is presentable, I promise.
Oh my God. I just have to say this, okay? First of all, September, when in September is the sequel coming out?
September 28th.
September 28th, you guys mark your calendars. Sky Hunter was my favorite book of 2020. Favorite book of 2020. This book, seriously, it was like the anthem book of 2020 for me. This book made me cry. I thought it was just so epic and beautiful. And I mean, if you know Marie Lu, you know that she is incapable of writing a bad book. She is only capable of writing excellent books. And I am a huge fan of her books. As she knows, I like fangirl over her constantly. But I loved Sky Hunter. I loved it so much. And I am on like pins and needles waiting for the sequel. So if you want to say anything about that.
Well, thank you. That means so much coming from you. Gosh, I promise the only reason I haven't sent it is because the copy edit file that I got back was so large that my poor editor had to split it into 4 files, just full of notes, just notes all over the place, full of like, the times don't match up. why is she here? And it's dark now, but then we switch the next chapter and it's the afternoon. Why? I'm like, I don't know. So it's a lot of that.
No
So
worries.
once it's like one coherent file,
Yay!
it's coming your way for sure. You're probably gonna be the first person to get it.
Can't wait. I'm gonna cry.
Thank you.
I'm gonna cry some more.
Reading my stuff.
I love it.
Oh, okay. I think we've got to open it up to Q&A. So I'm gonna open this up and pick out a few of these questions. Let's see. What is your favorite part of the writing process? I guess from like germination to when it comes out.
Oh, I think my favorite part. My favorite part changes constantly. I'm always like, oh, my favorite part is when I'm drafting. And then later I'll say, no, okay, when I'm doing edits, I'll say my favorite part is drafting. And when I'm doing copy edits, I'll say my favorite part is when I was doing the revision. And when I'm doing first pass pages, I'll say, oh, my favorite part is when I'm coming up with a new idea, because by then I'm so tired of editing the same book. And so it just always changes for me. I'm always the grass is greener kind of writer. I
am exactly that. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, because like every single time I'm copying it, I'm like, I just want to be drafting right now. And every time I'm drafting, I'm like, this is the actual worst. I just want to be copying it. So yeah, I feel you. And even sometimes I'm like, I love, the early stages when I don't know anything about the story and it's just this perfect vision in my head. And then I get to that point, I'm like, I'm so stressed out. I just want to like know what to write down. So yeah, I feel you.
We idealize all the other parts of the process that we are not currently actively engaging in.
It's very true.
Yeah.
Very true. Yeah. Let's see. And then lots of craft questions. What do you add in revisions that isn't present in the first draft?
What do I add?
Yeah, what do you add in revisions? Like, do you tend to focus more on, well, I mean, sorry, I will let you answer the first question.
I mean, I'd be so interested to hear you answer this question. I'm not very good at answering craft questions.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not great at answering them either because I feel like it changes depending on the book.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah, like for Sky Hunter, I basically had to rewrite the book in revision. So it was basically like a first draft, mostly because my editor came out. She's like, what if we switch the genders of your two main characters? And I was like, God dang it, you're right. And so that was a process. I guess I tend to put more, I tend to build up the world a little bit more. In my revisions. I'm kind of like a haphazard world builder. So, when I'm writing my first draft, I will do like just enough world building until I'm like, okay, this is coherent enough that I know where I am and my characters know where they are and I can just start. So first draft is kind of me world building as I go. And there's a lot of blanks in that, a lot of generic places, lots of, generic background scenes. And then I fill that in revisions, but I don't know. I guess everything else, it depends. I guess it depends on the book. So
yeah, I would agree with that. I think every book has different requirements and needs. But yes, I also definitely in the second pass in a revision, I'm building out the worlds more and making sure that the reader is not walking through the world blind. And I try to do I like to access the five senses as I'm writing, like make sure that there's a little bit of that in as many places as possible.
Right.
Yeah.
Lots of these Woven Kingdom questions. I'm trying to find a non-craft question.
It's okay. I mean, we can take a crack at stuff.
Yeah. Okay. So, actually, what how do you come up with your character names and book titles? Do you have like specific reasons behind why you choose your characters' names?
For my contemporaries, for these books, I do. So a very large expanse of sea is the Oxford English Dictionary definition of the word ocean, which is the name of the love interest in the first book. Also, it's a metaphor because there's an ocean between them, and it's like a different worlds, and so it's a metaphor. But also, the main character in that book, her name is Shireen, and Shireen in Farsi means sweet, but she is inherently a very angry and often unkind character. So she is the antithesis of her name. But the point of the book is for her to get back to who she really is, which is a nice person who's just been so injured by the world that she has defaulted to unkindness and anger as a defense mechanism. So she's trying to reclaim herself in the process. She's trying to reclaim her name. An emotion of great delight is the definition of the word joy, which is the meaning of the name Shadi, which is the name of the main character of the book. So Shadi's name means joy, and yet she's very sad for most of the book. And the point of the story is for her to be on a journey back to herself. So she is on a journey toward an emotion of great delight. So those books, yes, the names and the titles were all very, very specific. There were a lot of metaphors in the story, like the rain. There's a lot of rain. It doesn't start raining until the very end of the first chapter, and then rain never stops until like the end of the book. Things like that. Like her backpack, she's always like dragging her backpack around and she can't figure out why.
I noticed that, yeah.
It's a metaphor, right? She can't seem to put those burdens down. But at the end of the book, she doesn't have her backpack. And it's
I love it.
Right, metaphors. I like metaphors. So yeah, sometimes I get very specific, but no, otherwise very uninspired. Like Kenji's name, Kenji from the Shadow series, I named him after Genji from The Tale of Genji, which was a book I loved, that I studied in college and loved very, very much. Warner's name was inspired by the word war.
I love it.
Very uninspired.
They feel inspiring.
But what about you? Do you have
sometimes it depends, I think. I feel like that's always my answer. Questions is it depends, but I sometimes I just like the sound of a name. Like I like the sound of Talon in Sky Hunter. The sound of like somebody with some claws, and that she was somebody who she didn't speak, but that didn't mean that she couldn't defend herself, and she was not afraid to use that. So I like that name from the way it sounded. Like Day and June in the Legend series, Day was kind of representative of his outlook on life, and that he was a very optimistic person, and that his motto was basically to walk in the light. So his street name was Day because of that. Daniel, I think I just liked the name Daniel. I thought it was a nice name for his full name. And then June was named after the month of June because I thought her personality kind of matched a Gemini's. So kind of like little reasons here and there. And Adelina was named Noble, and kind of, I guess, with a similar sort of reasoning behind how you named Shireen and Shadi. Yeah, I'm like, oh, you want to be noble, but your life has other plans. So sometimes there's reasons. Sometimes I like the sound of a name. Like Raffaele Laurent Basset was just a name that I thought sounded pretty, and he was a very pretty boy. So like, you get a pretty name, and you. So someone is curious, what is Shadi's favorite Persian dish?
Oh gosh, I have not thought about that. What is your favorite Persian dish?
This I just got a
Um,
recent question of like somebody was like, when is Hideo's birthday? And I was like, I don't know.
Yeah.
No.
I know, I know. I know exactly what you mean. And then you're like, oh,
Mike.
let me think about that.
Were you inspired by poems when writing your books? Were there any collections of poems?
I mean, oh, well, so when I was writing This Woven Kingdom, the upcoming fantasy novel, I was heavily inspired by the Shahnameh, which is an epic poem. It's 30,000 rhyming couplets. 30,000?
Wow.
I think it's 30,000 rhyming couplets, written by like one of the, I mean, the infamous Ferdowsi, who is like, I mean, Iran's like Iranian history's pride and joy. He is just an incredible talent and like an incredible poet. And the Shahnameh is just, it's this crazy epic story, but it's all told in rhyming couplets. And I read that. I mean, I'm very familiar with it. It's just a part of my like background. I think any Iranian person has been introduced, most, if not all, have been introduced to the Shahnameh in some essential way. But I revisited it when I was researching and thinking about this book, because it's like Game of Thrones was set in the Persian Empire. I mean, it's amazing.
Wow.
And really cool. So I was definitely inspired by that.
That's amazing. Sure. I want to read that. It sounds so good.
Yeah.
Let's see. What are you working on right now?
That is a secret.
Very vague question.
I cannot answer that question.
Go ahead.
No, it's okay. It's a secret.
But it's gonna be amazing. Was there a character that didn't make it into the book or was changed drastically from the beginning? In
An Emotion of Great Delight?
Yes.
No.
Or I guess of any of your books. Yeah.
No. In This Woven Kingdom, I changed the name of my main character like 4 times.
Yeah.
I just couldn't decide. I don't know. Yeah. But she didn't change as a character, just her name did. But yeah. No, I don't. Did you ever do that? Have you ever done that? Like
change a character's
taken out a character? No, but I mean like no, like to have removed a character entirely from your story.
Early on, like early in my drafts, I do. Like Warcross's first version was so strange. Like the first couple of chapters that I wrote it was like set in outer space. It was like super sci-fi. There were 3 main characters who were bounty hunters all together. And then I wrote like 2 chapters of that, and I was like, I really don't like these other 2 characters. I just want to write about the one. Like there was just Amika and these 2 other characters who were always with her who just didn't matter. So they got the axe. Wow. So I do that kind of stuff a lot. But
I want to read Warcross in space. I loved Warcross. I loved it. I shook Marie when I saw her. I was like, "You're so amazing! How could you write this amazing book?"
Oh, thank you. Yeah, the first version was a little much. It was like one bit of sci-fi too much. So I was like, I'm gonna pull this back a little bit.
I don't believe it. I'm sure it was.
Oh my gosh. It was a lot. It was a lot. There's a lot of really sweet comments in here. Hannah Baker is saying that she would love to have a 5-minute conversation with you, that anyone who did, that their lives would change because you are so caring and empathetic. And I really adore that. And I agree with her 100%.
That is really kind. Thank you.
Do you feel that Shadi works through sadness similarly to how you do, or does she move through it differently? And if differently, was there any research involved in how to portray that successfully?
I think that Shadi moves through her sadness in a way that is similar to the way that I moved through it, but I think she's a better person than I was. I experienced grief in, I think, a more traditional way. Like, you know, grief, I mean, grief about like large universal scale grief, right? Like you're grieving your existence, right? You're grieving your lot in life. You're grieving the way things turned out, not necessarily the grief of losing somebody in your life, but like a much larger existential grief. Grief of being a marginalized person every day and dealing with the microaggressions that you might experience on a regular basis. You know, I think I was first in denial. And then I was, what's the next one? Like bargaining or something.
Yeah.
Maybe if I do this,
yeah.
right? Maybe if I act like this, then it'll be like this. And then, you know, anger, a lot of anger, right? When you realize like, oh no, this is the situation. I was angry for a very, very long time. And I think what I had to learn was that, you know, in the process of erecting those walls, right, to protect yourself from the world that has hurt you, from the people that have hurt you, you think that you're creating a safe space for yourself to escape. But what you've actually done is built yourself a fortress for one. And you are now fully and completely isolated from the world. And you have let them win, you know, and it takes a long time to realize that. And I think it took me even longer to realize that true strength does not lie in hardness, because being hard and angry and tough all the time requires so much energy. And in the end, what it does is that it leaves you brittle. It leaves you so weak and so brittle that like a single gust, a single blow, and you are, you know, you're obliterated, right? Like the angriest people are actually some of the most vulnerable people who are trying so hard to appear tough, right? To appear invulnerable, and are as a result very easily shattered. And what I learned is that my true strength has derived from softness, because in being soft, I am made more flexible. And then when I'm more flexible, if I'm dealt a blow, I bend, I don't break. And so it's made me a much more robust, more compassionate, more like a much happier person, honestly, ultimately, to imagine the world complexly and to approach it with compassion, and to not deny myself the thin skin that makes me compatible with compassion, because that hardness just insulates me entirely. So I think Shadi is a better person than I was as a teenager. She is a much more sensitive person, much more vulnerable person, whereas I sought refuge in anger, for sure.
That's so amazing and so beautiful. I love that so much, and I guess a really wonderful way for us to end. And I'm sorry I've gone over time, but it was just such an amazing talk with you, as always. Thank you so much for this. Thank you for writing. Thank you for writing this beautiful book. Thank you for being yourself, and sharing yourself with the world. And thank you everyone for being here.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you, Marie, for your amazing questions and for just being an incredible person.
Oh, it's always my honor.
And thank you, Village Books.
Thank you, Village Books. Thank you, Bellingham Public Library.
Bellingham Public Library.
Yeah, it was so much fun.
This was just the best. Thank you. I don't know if you were able to watch everything that was going on in the chat, but I think it's pretty fair to say that everybody's just kind of overwhelmed by what they heard today. And we're all very grateful for this event today. And of course, being the bookseller in the room, I will be popping in the chat the link. If you follow that link to the Village Books website, our authors' books are listed there, all on one page. And so we encourage you to visit that. But I just want to say thank you so much. I have learned a lot today. And boy, you've piqued my interest on so many things. And so thank you. I'm very grateful. Jennifer, do you have anything you want to say? You're muted.
It's been such a joy to listen to you guys and to meet you. So thank you so much.
Thank you guys. Thank you. It's a
guys.
pleasure.
Yeah. And thank
So
you
much.
to the audience, everybody who came from all over the world. We had the United Kingdom, Australia, the Netherlands. I mean, everybody around the globe. So this was just very, very special. And
Thank you so much.
filled with gratitude and best wishes for an emotion of great delight. And we can't wait for this woven kingdom. Oh my gosh, everybody's
so ready.
freaking out about this woven kingdom. So, all right. So thank you, and everybody be well and keep reading.
Yes, stay well, everyone. Bye.
Bye.